Hi, and welcome to another Pi Crowdcast. I'm Rick Tarosi, co-founder and general manager of Pi. I'll be your host. Today, we're talking with Karthy Chandra, the founder and CEO of Goalden Hour. We'll be talking about how to use the Agile software methodology to improve tasks and goals, some simple and effective tips for adopting new habits, and how your core values can drive not only your to-do lists, but also your reflection. If this information is valuable, we'd really appreciate you subscribing, and if you have any questions, we'll look forward to seeing them in the comments. Now, without further ado, let's get into this interview.
Sure. So Goalden Hour is a productivity tool that helps people make more time for their goals and good habits, but within the context of the rest of their lives. So we are essentially bringing together the realms of scheduling, task management, and self-improvement to encourage people to, make time for the things that are truly important to them and also allow them to manage their whole lives in one place. And, I guess where it all started, ever since I can remember, I've always been a self-improvement junkie. I was the kid at the bookstore that the toy store that picked books instead of toys. And I've always loved planning because for an instant, it just makes me feel like I have my life together, even if I don't. And the more things that I plan for, the more put together I feel. And I remember there was one point in my life, I was planning ahead all of my meals and all of my outfits for the week. And it worked out great. On the weekends, I would look in my fridge and I would ask myself, what do I have in here? What do I need to finish to avoid wasting food? And then based on that, I would look up recipes. I would decide what I wanted to make. And then I would go grocery shopping and get what I needed. And it was simple, easy, efficient. Same with my outfits, on the weekend, I would plan out everything that I was going to wear. And, I'd check the weather, I'd cross-reference my calendar, and then I'd lay everything out on my dresser. And I can't tell you how much stress it eliminated from my mornings to not be frantically rummaging through my drawers trying to figure out what to wear. And, now I hear it was all accessorized and my outfits would match my nails. And as a result, I would just feel better. I would be more calm and confident knowing that I looked good and that I was doing good, doing the right things. But like everyone else, I am fallible. And while I'd have these really incredible phases in my life where I felt like I was on top of the world and I was really doing all the things that I should have been doing, it felt short-lived very often. Something would come up. I would travel. I'd get busy with school or work. I get sucked into a binge-worthy show on Netflix, and I'd stop with the meal planning and the outfit prep. I would go back to ordering food because I didn't have anything in my fridge and stressing over what to wear in the morning. And I just found that I was having trouble sticking with a lot of my goals. And I would struggle with cultivating consistency in my habits. And when I started to ask myself why, I realized that when I go into crisis mode or bare minimum mode, where I'm not totally living up to my full potential, I'm really only concerned about the things that I need to do to get by. Okay. So, the obligations of work or school and the things that I need to do to survive, sleep, shower. I guess you don't need to shower to survive, but I still manage to do that even at my worst. But anyway, in those phases of my life, I was mostly just operating from my calendar and my task list. All my other productivity tools and habit trackers would go out the window, and somehow I'd be writing things down on a sticky note like a cave woman. And I don't mean to offend for those of you who might still do that, but it baffles me that, in this very modern digital era that we live in, most people still use a pen and paper to keep track of the things that they have to do. We have calendars and, those are helpful. They tell us where to be and when. But outside of that, there really is no consistency in how we manage our lives. So I've always been on the hunt for the best tools to keep track of everything. And I am always also consuming a lot of content, books and podcasts and articles. And I found myself, reading all this stuff, and there's so much of it out there, and it's good stuff too. And I would want to try it, but sometimes it's hard to make that jump from paper to practice. Mm-hmm. It just seems like we're inundated with all this information about how to be better and do better and feel better. But most of us struggle with putting things into practice. Mm-hmm. We have good intentions, but we have trouble with the implementation. And that's really where Goalden Hour comes in. We aim to bridge the divide between the things that you want to do and what you actually end up doing. And we have content in our product too, so you can find new ways to grow and improve. But then we try to take it a step further and help you actually find the time to get it done. We really emphasize planning and reflection in the product. And we actually borrow a lot of principles from Agile, which has kind of taken the tech world by storm. Because it turns out building good habits is a lot like building software.
And so you referred to Agile. Tell us more about this kind of concept of like Agile self-development. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Agile is a very particular approach to project management that is used in building software. And the central belief was that software development needed to be more adaptive and responsive to change. And the whole premise was based on using these like incremental iterative work sequences that are commonly known as sprints to build software, learn from your users, and then course correct as needed based on the feedback that you receive and the constraints that you're working within. It's hugely popular in the tech world, and it's also started to infiltrate other industries as well. But it wasn't always this way. The predominant approach to project management before Agile was waterfall, in which a project was sort of defined by these distinct phases and then moved sequentially from one stage to the next in a linear fashion. And this really stands in contrast to Agile, which is like very cyclical, right? You're constantly building something, putting it out there, collecting feedback, and then defining the next chunk of work to be done. But with waterfall, all those like stakeholder and customer requirements are gathered at the beginning of the project. And then the project is designed, that design is implemented, and then the whole product in its final state is delivered to the customer. And if it's not exactly what the customer wanted, or it turns out the customer didn't know what they wanted in the first place, you either have an unhappy customer and an unused product, or you have to bear the burden of making changes to the product, which is costly and time consuming. And so this is why Agile was really welcomed with open arms, because it just made more sense for the ever-evolving demands and constraints of building software. So now, what if we were to draw a parallel to our personal lives and how we approach goals? Most of us set goals with a waterfall mindset. You know, I want to lose 10 pounds by the end of the year. I want to run a marathon. I want to change careers. And there's nothing wrong with having those types of goals. The only problem is that you can't always control the outcome, right? Like, for example, if you get injured while training for that marathon, or you realize halfway through that you're not cut out to run long distances like me, then you failed for all intents and purposes.
Right.
But what you can control is the process or the actions that you take. So committing to a goal like eating 5 servings of vegetables a day, you know, running 3 times a week, or attending 2 networking events a month allows you to check in with yourself at the end of that day, that week, or that month, and then check off whether or not you achieved your goal. With the waterfall style goals, you won't know whether you've achieved the goal until you actually complete it. But with the Agile goals, you'll have a clear, consistent target, and you can work your way up to things, right? So you could start off with a goal of running 6 miles twice a week, and then, you know, up that to running 14 miles 3 times a week. Or if you're like me, you just realize that you don't like running and you go biking instead, which is fine, right? It's not a failure. It's a learning experience that helps you discover your strengths and weaknesses and allows you to narrow in on your values and interests.
How does that lens help you as a founder? Because I find a lot of founders are often in that mindset of, oh, I just need to raise this capital, or I just need to make it into this accelerator. Like there's some middle ground there between Agile for your own self-development, Agile for your software development, and then Agile for your business management, it seems.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing. It's just figuring out how to break those goals down into like bite-sized pieces. So it's not just about getting into the accelerator. It's what you're aiming to get out of it, and like how do you find little things that you can do on a repetitive basis that allow you to make the most out of the program that you're in.
How does Goalden Hour as a product kind of weave this concept in?
So we're still putting all the pieces together, but there's a key framework associated with Agile called Scrum that we really want to bring into people's personal lives. And we're infusing a lot of those principles of Scrum into our workflows. And Scrum is quite simply a framework that helps teams work together. Its origins, I think, actually come from rugby, where like the team huddles together to discuss their strategy for the next game. And it was adapted to be one of the implementations of the Agile methodology. And the principles of Scrum are really like the foundation for what makes this framework so successful. Like the nuances of how it works can be adapted to any organization, but there's some like non-negotiable values that it's based on. And first and foremost is incremental improvement. Like that's really the soul of Agile and Scrum. And each iteration is an improvement on the last iteration, and over time, those small iterations add up to big changes or a finished product. Adaptability and experimentation are also really core pillars of this framework. They go hand in hand with incremental improvement, and it means that we're constantly running these small experiments. We're keeping what's working, we're changing what's not, and it also means that if some high priority work comes up, like a bug or a customer complaint, the team can adapt to that, even if it threatens to derail the originally planned work. And then because working within the confines of an Agile sprint is relatively low stakes when compared to like a very meticulously planned out waterfall approach, we also have more room for experimentation. In fact, it's encouraged in Scrum. So the team has flexibility to create this safe environment that allows them to try out a new idea without being immediately judged by others if it doesn't work out as well as expected. Yeah. And then lastly, one of the most important parts of Scrum is intentional time for review and reflection. And it's really like 3 levels of reflection. It starts with reporting and responding, which can happen even on a daily basis. And then relating and reasoning to gain a deeper understanding of the team dynamics and different perspectives. And then lastly, reconstructing it all into actionable steps that can be implemented in the next iteration cycle. So I worked at a tech company for 4 years, and I saw them go through this Agile transformation. And I was incubating Goalden Hour at the same time. And I found myself thinking, well, gee, these are all really great principles to apply to your own personal life. So yeah, Goalden Hour is really the embodiment of some of these values. We encourage people to operate in little self-improvement sprints. We're building out like a daily self-scrum workflow where, you check in, you see what's on deck for the day, you plan your next few hours, and then you get to work. And then we engage in the afternoon, like real quick, how'd you do? How do you feel? And let's do it again, like plan the rest of the day and deliberately make time for the things that are important to you. And then at the end of the day, you check off all the progress that you made. You feel good about yourself and then spend a little bit more time in reflection. The other key piece of our product is experimentation through like a goal shopping workflow that we have. So you can browse different ideas and activities and choose what you want to bring into your life. And we really emphasize that it's an experiment. So it's okay to fail or not like something. We just keep trying new things until we figure out what works. And then the last piece is reflection. So right now we have like a weekly check-in where you can review the progress that you've made, revisit any outstanding goals, and reflect and reorient for the coming week. And as we continue to mature the product, we want to do more in that vein and essentially act as your de facto accountability partner and coach. And that's really what the North Star vision for Goalden Hour is, like an intelligent planner plus personal coach in your pocket that nudges you at the right times with the right information.
Obviously, the original concept for Goalden Hour started in a much different place than we find ourselves now. What has been the impact of the pandemic and this situation? How has that influenced the way you're thinking about future development of Goalden Hour?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of us, this pandemic has freed up more time for hobbies and self-care. And, in many cases, it's helped us form stronger bonds with the people who are important to us. And I personally have found that it's been a nice breather from the hustle and bustle of pre-COVID life. And I think it's a great opportunity for everyone to cultivate good productivity habits and infuse more personal development into their lives. And I think this is also in line with the trend that we've seen over the past few years, this seismic shift towards health and wellness trends and the global consciousness movement. More than ever, people are seeking new ways to better themselves, and they're banding together to heal our communities and the planet. So, let's keep doing that. Let's not go back to just the way it was. I think it's important to take a hard look at how we live our lives and what lights us up and what's important to us, and then intentionally decide how we're going to slice and dice each day so that you are truly living life to the fullest. And I think if we did that, it would have an enormous universal impact. I really believe that transforming the world really begins with each of us transforming ourselves.
That's a really good insight. So let's say watching at home, like what you're talking about, but not really sure what the first steps to getting started are, either through your own experience or what you've observed. What's the easiest way to start kind of infusing this kind of thinking into your daily life?
Sure. So, if we were just to take the Agile methodology, right? A lot of those ceremonies that are used in Scrum can very easily be adapted into daily and weekly rituals that might make your life operate more smoothly and seamlessly. So in Agile, we start with the basics. Is a sprint, right? A time box of a month or less in which a done, usable, or potentially releasable product increment is created. And now in our unique self-improvement twist to the sprint, we could also choose a time frame to operate in. I think a week makes sense since that's kind of the societal construct that we already operate in. But the point is, within that sprint, you aim to accomplish certain tasks and make progress on select goals. And then in Agile, every sprint begins with a planning meeting. And during that meeting, everyone comes together. They agree upon what work is going to be accomplished during that sprint. And it's important to realize that it's not necessarily a commitment. It's a forecast. Sometimes things turn out to be more complicated than expected, or unplanned surprises pop up. And that's just the nature of building and maintaining software that we have to account for. But it's also the nature of building and maintaining a life, right? Things are unpredictable, but it always helps to have a plan. So I think, our parallel to sprint planning is just some weekly planning, right? This includes assessing what needs to get done based on urgency and importance, and then deciding when to get it done. So you could identify your top goals and then break them down into bite-sized tasks and routines that you're able to make progress on that week. You might even go so far as I once did to plan out all your meals or your outfits, although probably not outfits since no one's going anywhere right now. Yeah. But my point is that when you automate these decisions ahead of time, you're not constantly depleting brain power in the moment, figuring out what your next meal is going to be, or scrambling to figure out what you're going to wear that doesn't make you look like a mismatched clown. So yeah, I think when you take some time to plan these things out, you operate from a place of ease and efficiency, which is always great.
Well, and what I appreciate about these kind of processes you're describing and kind of what I hear you saying, but maybe not explicitly, is you also get to focus on things when you're in the right headspace to be focused on those things. So there's more focus and less distraction, maybe.
Totally. Yeah. And I think it's the same thing, on a daily basis. Just having a plan that you are operating under helps you stick to, what you set out to do. Because I think if you just sort of wander aimlessly throughout your day, it's hard to know when you're distracted because you don't know what you're being distracted from.
Yep.
So yeah, I think some daily planning, you can do it the night before or first thing in the morning before you actually sit down to work. Start by reviewing your schedule and identifying where you have time to work on tasks and make progress on your goals. And you might even consider actually blocking out time in your calendar for these activities. especially if you find yourself getting distracted often. So the goal really is to like create a template for how your day is going to play out, and maybe even eliminate all that white space in your calendar. So, it doesn't matter what you do as long as that is what you had planned to do. So go ahead and scroll through social media, but at the time that you set aside for it, not at the expense of other things that you had planned to do, like spending time with your family. And granted, your schedule is not set in stone, but it helps to have that plan for what you aim to accomplish. And I think you also start to become more aware of, how long things take, how much buffer you need in between activities, and also, when you need to take breaks. And when you do take breaks, I think it's wise to like choose an activity that's going to leave you feeling rested or energized, as opposed to one that's going to further deplete or dull you.
Yep, that's great advice. So I hope that gives folks enough context. I'm always cautious because Karthy and I chat enough about this concept that I want to make sure everybody has appropriate context for it. But if this has raised some questions for you, go ahead and submit them under the Ask a Question box, and that'll get them in the queue. Or if you're curious as to what other questions folks have been asking, go ahead and jump in there and upvote the questions that you find most valuable. So we're going to jump into some of those questions right now, Karthy. The first one, you talked a little bit about what inspired you to create Goalden Hour, but maybe talk a little bit about how it differs from other typical productivity kind of apps.
Sure. So the market for productivity tools is pretty saturated, and personal development is also a very crowded space. And yet there is no dominant player except for maybe like Google Calendar, which does very little in the way of helping people live more vibrant and fulfilling lives. So, while there is no shortage of like task management tools or habit trackers in the market, none that we've seen combine the realms of calendar, tasks, and self-improvement, so that you can really manage your whole life in one place. Like I mentioned, we also have this like goal shopping feature where you can find new ways to grow and improve. It's very Pinterest-like. And in the future, we want to turn that also into a platform where you can connect with other businesses and resources and products that could help you achieve your goals in a way that's less intrusive and insensitive than traditional advertising. And then we've also got that digital coaching feature in the pipeline, which would take into account, demographic, psychographic, and behavioral data, along with your schedule and other inputs to basically allow us to most effectively nudge you towards your intended goals. So if we could figure out what your peak productivity hours are and the specific goals and activities that you're working on, we can start to give you tips and tricks that will help support you along your self-improvement journey. So I think the combination of those things and the really strong mission at the core of this is what sets us apart. Like, we're not just another productivity tool. In fact, we want to change the way people think about productivity and purposeful living, shifting the focus away from just getting things done to doing the right things.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
You touched on it a little bit, but could you talk a little bit more about effective ways to deal with tech distractions for folks?
Yeah, that one is super relevant. Honestly, like setting boundaries and establishing good tech hygiene would be my top tips. Beware of those like transitional moments in between activities when you decide to like check social media and accidentally get sucked into the infinite scroll. I'd really recommend taking a day or two off from social every week, or like I said before, like only checking it when it is the allotted time for you to check it. On the hygiene side, I recently discovered a Chrome extension called OneTab, which is for all of you out there that usually have like 30 tabs open at any given time. Basically what it does is it collapses all of those tabs into one page, and then you can access all the links at once. And that's been a lifesaver for me because my laptop is sort of coming towards the end of its life. And having too many tabs open makes it ridiculously slow, and it can cut my productivity by like half. Because of course, if my page is going to take a minute to load, I might check Instagram while I'm waiting to kill time. And then the next thing I know, it's like a half hour later. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And I will track down that link for One Tab, Andy, while Karthy's answering this next question.
Yeah.
I have a hard time finding a topic to focus on. So I find that I just don't start journaling like I should. Do you use any prompts, or do you have any techniques for inspiring that kind of thoughtful reflection for folks?
Yeah, sure. So I probably journal on like a weekly basis or so. But when I do, I like to write down a few things that I'm grateful for, a couple of things that I'm looking forward to, some big wins from my week, and then some things that I want to improve. Another journaling prompt that I really like to do is a core value check. And it doesn't have to be something you write down. It could just be like an introspective exercise that you do at the end of the day. But it does first require you to identify what your core values are, and then check in with yourself and ask, did I do something today to live up to those values? And if not, can I weave them in somehow tomorrow? So I'll run through my top 5 core values and give you an idea of what the exercise is like. So my top core value is continuous improvement and growth, in case you couldn't already tell. And doing this right now is a really great growth opportunity for me. For a while, I've been heads down building product, but now I'm also trying to build out our brand presence with Goalden Hour and establish some authority and credibility as a founder. And this is a great way to do that. So thank you for the opportunity, Rick.
Sure, of course.
Another one is kindness and compassion. Just trying to make the world a more pleasant place wherever I go. And almost every morning I make fruit smoothies for my family. And not only do I make them, but I also hand deliver them to each person wherever they are in the house. And that makes me feel good. Grace and good humor is another one, just trying to approach all my interactions in a light and lively way. So what do you say, Rick? Have I been graceful and good humored so far?
Yes, absolutely. You're doing great.
Productivity and efficiency, also one of my top core values. And yeah, I've gotten a fair amount done today. I would say on any given day, I try to tackle 1 big thing, 3 medium things, and like 5 small things. I would say if I cranked out like 1 more medium thing and 2 more small things, I hit my quota.
Okay.
And lastly, creativity and innovation. That's really important to me. I can't say I've done anything super creative today, but I do have a backlog of new features that I need to scope out for Goalden Hour. And that's going to require some design thinking. So yeah, I'll make time for it this weekend.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And I apologize, like for folks who haven't done this stuff before, it's way more draining than you think it would be. This takes a lot out of you. So I really appreciate you making the time and energy for this, Karthy, in your busy schedule.
Oh, of course.
Next question. Oh, interesting. Okay. Thoughts on Nir Eyal's new book, I think it's Indistractable, or BJ Fogg's new book, Tiny Habits, if you've read or listened to either of those.
Yes, I've read and listened to both of those, actually. And I've actually also had conversations with both Nir and BJ. They're awesome, really great people and really awesome content. I would highly recommend both of those books to anyone. So with Tiny Habits, that's the one that's most fresh in my memory. It's all about breaking your habits down into like the smallest, simplest step, and then just committing to that. And like the really ludicrous example that BJ uses in the book is flossing. Like when he wanted to start a regular flossing habit, he committed to just flossing 1 tooth. And if he did that, he would allow himself to feel accomplished. And of course, like while he was there, he was probably going to do the rest anyway. But at the very least, he would do that 1 like tooth, and that would be all. And he also shares in his book this like tiny habit recipe. And it starts with an anchoring moment because it's easier to build a habit if you tie it to something that you already do. So one that I'm actually working on right now is trying to create a more consistent reading habit. And my anchoring moment is getting into bed. I do that every night. And if I tie it to something that I'm already doing, then I'm more likely to keep up with the new habit. And so that's the first thing that prompts me to actually start reading. But the way that he suggests that you do it is having some sort of like starter step. The habit that you're trying to build and the one thing that you do no matter what. And it could be very, very simple. And so for me, it's just picking up the book, right? Like if I'm exhausted, then I pick it up and I put it back down.
Yep.
But at the very least, I pick the book up. And then usually what I do is at least read a page. And that's like the scaled back version of the habit. What I really want to do is like read a whole chapter, but sometimes that's not feasible. So at least reading a page makes me feel like I am building consistency with this habit. And lastly, the most important thing to do when you finish the habit is a celebration of some sort. Something that helps you root that habit in, because you change best by feeling good. It could be a pat on the back or like a fist bump. Just something that helps you, create like a dopamine spike in yourself. So I think habits are by definition like an impulse to do a behavior with like little or no conscious thought. And so the key to building a long-lasting habit is just that consistency, like doing it over and over and over again until it's muscle memory. And when most of us decide to make changes in our life, we declare that we're going to turn over a new leaf, and we're intensely motivated and excited to get started. And that's usually followed by a period of intense activity, but then we get tired or fatigued or burned out, and then we stop altogether. And then we're right back at square one. And so the new pattern that we should adopt is, starting with a plan and a commitment to take action. And that plan should have us start small, because when we incorporate a routine into our life that is easy, practical, and enjoyable, we're more likely to stick with it. And then that consistent action means that we make progress, we build momentum, and that continues to motivate us. And over time, we can grow and develop the activity. We can do it more, we can do it better, we can do it different.
And any thoughts on Nir's book?
Yeah, so Nir's book is like just a bunch of tactics to help stave off distractions. And I think a really cool concept that he explains is how everything that you do is either a distraction, something that takes you away from your goals, or it's traction. It's something that helps you get closer to your goals. And just trying to like think through all the things that you do and whether they're a distraction or traction, I think is a really powerful exercise. Apart from that, he talks about these like 3 domains of your life. Yourself, the people that are important to you, your family and your friends, and then your work. And then very consciously making time for each of those things. And again, sort of like categorizing everything that you do as fitting into one of those buckets. Is this something for me? Is this something for the people that are important to me? Or is this something that I'm doing either because I'm passionate about it, or it's making me money? And how do you find a way to balance these things so that you're not neglecting one in exchange for the other?
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. The end result of successfully operating Agile is lower cost, lower friction, faster fit. How does a product release cycle transfer to the idea of self-improvement? How do you help users sustain Agile? Well, there are a bunch of questions. So why don't we start with that one? And then I'll jump to the next one. So how does a product release cycle transfer to the idea of self-improvement?
Sure. I'm not sure like it's a very neat translation.
Direct.
I would say, when you try something new, just check in with yourself afterwards. Like, how did I feel doing that? Was it interesting? Does it feel like it's aligned with my values? And then figuring out whether you want to do more of it or do less of it. And that's really what what you do in the Agile process too, right? Like you build something, you put it out there, you get feedback from your customers, and then you decide, are we going to keep building this thing, or are we going to scrap it and build the next thing? I think another really, key thing that we do in the Agile process is keeping like a backlog of things that you want to do. And then constantly like grooming that backlog and reevaluating, okay, what is the next most important thing for us to work on? And bringing some of that into your life, I think, can be very important too. Even just as part of the daily planning process, like what do I have to get done because it's due today, or somebody else is depending on it? And then how do I weave in things that are also important to me, right? And make time for those things. So it's a balancing act between, these deadlines and crises, and also the habits and routines that really help you operate more effectively and efficiently. And that balance will also help you stay more productive, right? And so you can't just work on all the productivity stuff and neglect the personal development, because when you do that, then you burn out and you're not as efficient as you could be.
Yep. How do you help users sustain Agile, or how do you reward them to keep using it? I guess to put it another way is, how do you develop the habit of effectively using Agile on a regular basis?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about working in Agile in a working environment is that you have the accountability from the people that you work with, and also the organization at large. I think sometimes it can be hard to stick with this practice if you're just doing it yourself, but it's a great thing to do with your family members, and I think it can also help eliminate friction in a household if you actually did it with other people, and that can be very rewarding as well. So, I would say the weekly planning activity is a great ritual to do with your family or your roommates, since that plan for the week might revolve around certain household activities and responsibilities. So if you divvy up chores, spend some time, deciding who's going to do what, plan out which days you're going to cook and what you're going to cook, and have that touch point every day during the week where you're holding each other accountable to making a plan for the day. And when you plan together, you can also plan for the activities that you're going to do together, whether it's taking a walk or watching a show together. And that way it doesn't feel like an interruption when somebody asks if you want to go on a walk or watch TV. It's what you've both planned for. And then lastly, if you have specific time in your day or in your week to talk about the things that might be getting on your nerves, that I think that could be really rewarding too, right? Like if we spend our day being passive aggressively upset because someone left their dirty dishes in the sink, that's no good for us. But if we try to intervene when they're in a meeting or in the middle of something, they might get frustrated and defensive. And that rarely ends well, right? So having some time that you've set aside to have constructive conversations about how to make the living situation more pleasant for everyone, I think allows you to circumvent a lot of tension, and it prevents people from just getting caught off guard. And it's just more easy to assume positive intent when you've made the effort to create a safe space. So yeah, I would really say it's rewarding when you do it with other people and everyone sees the value of this process. And that's a really great way to hold yourself accountable to doing it too. If you feel like just trying this for yourself, you're not building that consistency that you want to.
That's awesome. Thank you. Next question, is Goalden Hour's primary audience still college-age students as it was back at Founders Live? If so, does all this language regarding Agile methodology and sprints and scrums, which are so familiar within the startup community, go over their head? How do you make it more digestible for kind of all audiences if they don't have that kind of product development mindset?
Sure, yeah. We are still targeting college-age students. Primarily because when we think about the market for productivity tools, a lot of it is really targeted towards adults or the enterprise. And we felt like, this entry point into the market would be really a great way for us to establish our presence there and make an impact with people who are, quite honestly, very scattered and stressed, balancing their schoolwork with extracurriculars and trying really hard to beat procrastination. As far as, the Agile methodology, like we don't necessarily market our product as an Agile self-development product. We just weave in a lot of those principles and, get people to plan for their day and spend some time in reflection and experiment with new habits and goals. And so it's more so the values that we've baked into the product that are apparent. I just like talking about it in the context of Agile, especially within, folks who understand it, because it's a really tried and tested methodology. And it's one of those things where, you just think about it, it makes sense. It feels like these are good, structured things to put into your day or week that could help you stay productive and live a purposeful life.
Cool. Speaking of Goalden Hour, how does Goalden Hour help with sticking to these new habits and work styles? So how does the product help reinforce behavior for folks?
Yeah. So right now it's just like a framework to help empower people to make more time for their routines in relation to all of their tasks. So if you take a look at the product today, your daily experience with Goalden Hour is through this planning dashboard, and you'll see tasks there and you'll see routines, like the things that you're trying to build consistency with, and then also the things that are more just one-off. Something that we're doing that people have really resonated with is forcing a complete by date on every task to prevent things from just piling up in lists endlessly. And this is kind of similar to the product backlog concept too. You sort of put a date on every single thing, and then it filters through our lists based on when you aim to, get them done, or when they become increasingly relevant. And that really keeps you focused on the most important and essential things. And so the habit that we're really trying to cultivate there is, okay, let me laser focus on what do I have to get done this week or today, and all that other stuff is still captured there, right? And I think it's important to capture that, because otherwise it's just knocking around in your head somewhere. But it's not something that I am going to be concerned with today. And then apart from that, I would say, reinforcing behavior by, getting people to spend some time in reflection. Having a point in the week when you're looking at everything that you set out to accomplish and seeing how you stacked up, and, figuring out what to do with those outstanding items. Like if you didn't work on them last week, reschedule them for next week or beyond, or just ask yourself, is that thing really important to me? Like that thing that I've been procrastinating on for 3 weeks in a row, is that maybe an indication that this thing isn't all that important to me, or that I just don't have the time for it right now, which is fine. It's okay. But I think it's a valuable exercise just to be thinking through those things. And just making a conscious effort to figure out what are the things that I really enjoy doing. What did I learn from this past week, and what can I improve on for the coming week? And I think just spending a little bit of that time in reflection is just a good personal development tool to cultivate. You might recognize patterns that would have otherwise gone unnoticed, and perhaps you will carry some of those learnings from the week forward and spend more time doing things that you enjoy. I think it's just a matter of getting into a consistent habit of planning, reflecting, and trying new things and discovering who you are.
Cool. Thank you. Google just rolled out tasks in a more integrated manner within the Gmail experience, which then, of course, also integrates with the Google Calendar function that we've been discussing here. This is rephrasing the question, but the gist of it is this something that's going to stick around, or is this just another Google foray into a product that that's going to go away because it doesn't match the way we work. What are your thoughts on Google trying to kind of increase productivity there?
Yeah, so I'm not sure what Google's plans are. I do know that they have the taskbar on the side, and I believe you can like drag and drop things into your calendar, and that's a pretty similar approach to what we're trying to do. You know, getting people to like play Tetris with their schedule. But I think that we want to approach it from just a place of more like meaning and purpose. It feels like Google is very like hyper focused on productivity. And they actually do have a goals feature. Not a lot of people know about it. I think it's only available on mobile, but you basically tell Google, oh, like I want to do, you know, this activity 3 times a week for 15 minutes each time, and it will automatically schedule time into your calendar for you to do it. But most people that I've talked to either have never heard of it or they don't like being told when to do something. And yeah, I mean, I just think that, you know, we need to find ways to cultivate good habits and bring those things into our life. And Google doesn't really cater to that so much. And also some goals just don't make sense to be scheduled, right? You know, if your goal is to, again, run that marathon, like you need something to guide you along the way, right? It's a lot of dietary changes. It's a lot of training that you're doing. It's just a more complex goal. And a lot of the tools out there don't really account for that. They're either hyper focused on that specific thing, or they're too general. And so we're really trying to bring an experience into Goalden Hour where, you know, you can accommodate all sorts of goals that you might have, and find ways to actually make time for them in your daily life. And we'll likely integrate with Google Calendar. So we'll pull in the things that Google is already recording for you, and then just create an interface where you can drag and drop things in and make time for the things that are important to you.
Cool. Thank you. We've talked a lot about the kind of motivating factors and that kind of thing. Does Goalden Hour incorporate any sort of external accountability functions, or is it solely grounded in kind of internal personal motivations?
I think, you know, intrinsic motivation is really important. Like we want people to feel good about the things that they're doing, and as a result, keep doing more of those things. But for a lot of people, I think external accountability is also important. We are certainly thinking about features where, you know, there's some sort of like peer-to-peer accountability that is built in. You know, there could be a challenge of the week or of the month where, you know, you ask one of your friends to participate with you. Like, let's try no social media for a week, or, you know, a month without sugar, things like that. Apart from that, we like that goal shopping experience that we have. I think it would be really impactful if people could upvote things. Because right now there's a bunch of content in there, but if you could see like what are the top 10 things that people do to manage stress that have been effective for them, you're more likely to try those things too. So yeah, just building out, you know, some other ways for people to interact with each other on our platform and really help each other succeed. I think that would be a really great way to bring some external accountability into it. Apart from that, you know, like I said, the digital coach in your pocket experience is what I'm really most excited for in the future. It's going to be, you know, something that really understands who you are and what your values and interests are. You know, you've told us what your goals are, and we know what your schedule looks like too, right? So we notice that you have like 3 hours that are free. We might nudge you to work on your goals. If we know that you are, you know, trying to build a regular practice of going to the gym, we could send you a reminder the night before to like set your gym clothes out so you're more likely to get that morning workout in. So just little things like that where, you know, we're providing you suggestions, or we're taking into account what's going on in your life to figure out how we can best tailor this self-improvement experience to make you successful.
Awesome. Thank you. So this is the time where we kind of turn the tables and ask you, what can we as a community be doing to help you and Goalden Hour? How can we be most helpful?
Sure. So, we launched an MVP back in January, and we've been testing and iterating on the product since. So you can check it out at goaldenhour.com. Don't forget the A in Goalden. And it's in beta right now, free to try out. We would love if you would, check it out, engage with us, share feedback, spread the word, follow us on Twitter, Instagram. And, this was mentioned earlier, but while we are building a general consumer product, we are really focused on students. So helping them balance their schoolwork and extracurriculars, beat procrastination, build healthy lifestyle habits. So if you know any students or have connections to universities, that would be really helpful for us. And we're actually hoping to launch before the new school year. And we'd love nothing more than to have an army of champions who are willing to share our product within their communities and amplify our message.
Awesome. Well, Karthy, thank you. It's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time to answer those questions. We really appreciate having you here.